Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video.
I'm a 19-year-old boy in my last year of high school. In the past few months, my friends and I have gotten into the habit of going to my room and smoking a joint or two. We pass it around and laugh with each other for a few hours. We do what every teenager does at some point or another during their life, and I'd like to think that we do it pretty responsibly. We always make sure we're not endangering anything, and most of us are already allowed to smoke a cigarette or two. So the fact that we smoke in my room means that we're doing it in the safest and least dangerous way possible. Quite honestly, my friend group and I are quite the group of nerds, and even when we're doing something that's considered reckless, like smoking weed, we start talking about how the universe works and how biology is so important for everyone to learn about. We're basically as nerdy as it gets. I guess we're all aware of the fact that smoking weed is something everybody does at some point or the other in their life, and we take pride in the fact that we do it differently and we do it responsibly, which makes what happens in this story all the more outrageous. One day, right after summer vacations, my neighbor came up to me while I was smoking a cigarette on our driveway and told me that he's very disappointed in me. Deep down, I was like, okay, and what about it? I don't really give a shit about what you think of me. But as he went on, I realized that he was probably insinuating something along the lines of blackmail. He told me that he had always seen me to be a smart kid that gets good grades and listens to what his parents tell him, and seeing me through the window smoking weed with my friends, disrespecting my home and my family, left an indent on his perception of me. Even at this point, I was like, okay, and what about it? That is until he told me that he had been taking it far too long and came to the decision that he should tell my parents. Obviously, at this point, I started panicking and I told him that he shouldn't do that and that we're doing it very responsibly. He then proceeded to tell me that there was nothing responsible about smoking weed every single day instead of doing homework and tending to my chores. Which isn't true, as I told you, because we only smoked during the weekends. It was just once or twice a week max. That's when I started realizing that this man was probably insinuating that he could manipulate the truth to his liking when talking to my parents, regardless of whether it actually happened or not. After that, he told me that he would let me off the hook if I told him who I got the weed from and let him handle things with that person, because selling weed to minors is simply unacceptable by his standards. If I didn't know who he actually was, I would actually think that he was a good guy and probably cave into his request. Likewise, I too would notice him from my window from time to time. I see him coming back home basically blackout drunk in the middle of the night on a random Tuesday, and he really didn't come off as the kind of guy that would be concerned about the safety of teenagers smoking joints in their house. That's when I realized that he was probably trying to get me to tell him where I was getting the weed from so he could go get it himself. Now that I've seen how the rest takes place, I think that's actually what's happening. At the time, I told him that I didn't buy it from anyone and that my friends and I came across it while taking our dogs on a walk in the early morning and decided to smoke it over a very long period of time, which already sounds like a lie because what the hell kind of lost and found stash lasts for over 4 or 5 months of smoking every weekend, but whatever, he's stupid and didn't even catch up on it. He then proceeded to start getting angry and demanding that I give him whatever weed I have left because substances shouldn't be left in the possession of little kids. The change in his demeanor as well as the angst in his voice let me know just what his true intentions were. He just wanted weed for himself and he was blackmailing me to give it to him. When I told him that we had just ran out that weekend, that I would really give it to him if I could, and even got to the point of almost crying in front of him, he said that he had been taking pictures of me and my friends smoking the joints and he would be showing them to my parents if I don't actually tell him the truth or give him the weed. I called bullshit and told him that he was capping. And no way he would be able to get a good view of my bedroom from his window. That's when he pulled out his phone and showed me a video of me specifically passing the joint after smoking it to my friend and best friend that my parents trusted most. At that point, I kind of panicked and realized that he wasn't lying about the pictures and didn't pause to think how weird it was that he could get a clear view of my bed from his bedroom window, and started begging him not to show it to my parents, but this time, Instead of it being just to get him off my shoulders, it was actually out of being in distress. I gave him whatever weed I had that week and told him that it was genuinely because I was running out of it, keeping up whatever lie I had made in the first place to not let him know that I was capable of lying to him so ruthlessly. The following morning, my mother basically broke into my room in rage. I immediately knew that it was probably because that piece of shit had snatched on me. She told me that our neighbor came up to her that morning and told her that he sees me smoking weed every single day with my friends through his window, and even showed her the video I just told you about. I let myself get scolded and didn't even try to stand up for myself or give the arguments that I had given him. After my mother grounded me and told me to stay in my room for at least a couple of months without meeting or going out with any of my friends, which at the time I thought was a little over the top and now I'm kind of grateful for, because I sat in my room without any distractions, I realized just how messed up it was that this weird-ass junkie druggy a-hole watching me through his window and taking videos of minors, basically window peeping on us while we were doing normal teenager activities. When I told my mom that we should probably look into blocking his view and not letting him see me anymore, I expected her to dismiss me and tell me that I'm just trying to have more privacy to do extra illegal shit. I genuinely saw the moment in which the light bulb went off on top of her head, in which she realized that even though he was making the parenting process easier, he was also doing something illegal. My mother called the police to report on the guy that was taking videos of teens through their home windows, and the police obviously didn't look into it much and only asked him if he had any videos of minors. He obviously denied everything, which is why it set my mother even more over the edge. Luckily for us, we ended up finding a way to get our own closure, and that's because this neighbor of ours worked at my uncle's best friend's company. And when I say company, I'm being very generous because it's barely considered a small business. When we told him everything that happened and just how messed up the guy was in his head, he confessed to us that he had been looking for a reason to fire him for months now, because he shows up really late and messes up the equipment and harasses in Pics fights with just about everyone that looks his way. He ended up firing him soon after, and my neighbor put two and two together and realized that his interactions with my family were what got him fired. He started throwing trash on our lawn and letting his dogs urinate in our driveway without cleaning up after them or even apologizing. He can be as salty and mad as he wants to, because at the end of the day, he got exactly what he deserved. Not the a-hole. Although I can't say that with 100% certainty because your parents and the way they reacted to the situation is so shallow end. They should have questioned the weirdness of the situation the moment he came up to them and showed them a video of their teenager smoking weed through his window without him knowing, especially considering the fact that it was you on your bed. I would have kicked the shit out of him if I was your dad, but then again, I don't really know how pissed off they were about the whole weed situation. And that could probably be why they didn't look into it too much. Not the a-hole. Finally, the creep got what he deserved. I applaud you for finding the perfect way to pay him back for his kind and respectful observations. He clearly had malicious intent with filming the video in the first place and wanted the weed even when he was taking it, not out of fear for you or your friend's safety. Not the a-hole. He made it very obvious that the whole point of him taking the video was the weed and not actually being concerned because obviously he's not a good guy nor a good neighbor. He's a drinker and a druggie and sucks at his job. And the fact that he's allowed his dogs to pee in your property is just one of the many reasons this story successfully made me hate a guy that I've never met. At least it helps me sleep at night knowing that he lost his job as a result of his creepy and crappy behavior. Next story. Let me start by saying I have a big household for the amount of space in the house. In my house, there's my parents, my two brothers, my sister, my grandpa, my aunt, and me, 19 female. My sister and I share a room. Sure, sharing rooms sucked growing up, but we got used to it. My aunt and grandpa have their own rooms, though my aunt has been unofficially moved out for 2 years now. She lives with her boyfriend out of town and only comes home occasionally for maybe less than a week in total out of a whole year. The problem is that when I went to college, my sister, 12 female, was very excited to have her own room for the first time. She got a new bed, painted her walls, and bought decorations. I was happy for her, but that meant they threw out the bunk bed we used to share. All my stuff went into boxes in the garage. This happened less than a month after I left for school, by the way. I felt like this was really uncalled for because it wasn't like I was moving out. I was still visiting home every few weeks, and I had breaks in school also. Where would I sleep during those times? My parents told me to just stay in my sister's room, but that would mean sleeping on the floor and also invading her privacy, which she deserves. I felt like if they wanted me to stay with my sister on my trips home, they should have at least kept the bunk bed. Now that I'm back for a month-long Christmas break, I've been sleeping on the floor in my sister's room or on the couch. Finally, I asked if it would be okay for me to sleep in my aunt's room since she's hardly home. My parents said it was fine, so I moved my luggage and sheets there. However, with the holiday season, they've been offering the room to other relatives when they come into town. This again forces me not only to sleep somewhere uncomfortable, but to have to move my stuff. Every time I have to move my stuff and find a temporary place for it, I feel discarded. Finally, I called it out. My cousin is having a wedding and we have relatives in town. My dad told me to clean out my stuff from my aunt's room, as an uncle would stay there. I told him that he shouldn't be offering up our house to other people when we hardly had enough beds for the people already living here. I said, while it would be nice for them to stay at our home, they are adults and can afford a hotel. At this point, my dad said that they're family and we should offer everything we have for them. Plus, that I'm young and can afford a few nights on the floor. He called me disrespectful for telling him what to do with his space. While I understand that, the fact that they got rid of my stuff in my room so quickly makes me feel like I don't have a place in this house. I agree, it's only for a few nights, but I still feel upset. It would be different if I had my own place, but my dorm is temporary and after college, I'll likely return to living with my parents. Where will I sleep then? While I could be the a-hole for talking back, I feel like my anger is reasonable. Not the a-hole. It is unfair, especially when they have a room that's largely empty you can sleep in, and shorter-term visitors could sleep on the couch like you have. If you mean to be home more, you could ask if they'd get an air mattress you could use or bring your own so you'd be slightly more comfortable. I think you need to be looking into alternatives to living at home after school sooner rather than later if you can. Being old enough to drink and sleeping in your kid sister's room or on the couch isn't sustainable. Not the a-hole. You're still there part-time and presumably will need to go back once you graduate until you get a job and save up enough for rent, mortgage, and basic furniture, utensils, and appliances. Morally, a designated space should be kept for you at this point. Brace yourself. Dad is sending you the message that you're not really welcome back, except for special occasions, and wants you out of the nest. He'll make you miserable until you have enough to leave. Some parents believe in cutting their kids off once they're of legal age and doing no more than what's legally required of them, perhaps to ensure that they get the message they can't stay forever, and you have one of them. Not the a-hole. Do ask your father again. Where are you going to be after college? Are they wanting you to leave home because that's what their actions are telling you? That you are no longer welcome and you should be looking for your own home and job as soon as college finishes, as they have no room for you. If they call you disrespectful again, do just that and start looking for work and a shared house to rent. Next story. I'm a 37-year-old woman. I come from a dirt poor family. Me, my parents, and my 4 siblings used to live in a 1-bedroom apartment, which was located in the shittiest part of town. There were days when my parents couldn't even afford food. My parents were very abusive, both physically and verbally. Dad was an alcoholic and mom was a drug addict. I was the target of their abuse 99% of the time because I was the oldest kid. I started working part-time jobs when I was 13 years old. I ran away from home when I was 16 because I just couldn't stand that environment anymore. And also, my siblings were extremely toxic as well, due to the fact that they expected me to provide for them since our parents couldn't do it. But I was a kid too. Recently, after over 20 years since I cut off all contact with my entire family, they managed to somehow reach out to me with the help of a distant relative with whom I've kept in touch throughout the years. My parents started talking to me like nothing has ever happened, which angered the hell out of me. I told them that they should first and foremost apologize for everything they've put me through. They firmly denied that they ever abused me or hurt me in any way. Then they started talking about how they've heard that I'm really wealthy now, which is true. I'm an entrepreneur, my net worth is probably in the low to mid 8 digits, and how they're still struggling. They told me that my siblings also need someone to support them financially. They told me that I should spare a few dollars since I have way more than I'd ever need to help them and my younger siblings because the past is the past and we're family no matter what after all. I told them to F off and that it's not my job to provide for any of them and that they're still the exact same pieces of crap they were 20 years ago. Family doesn't mean blood. I hung up and blocked the number. Not the a-hole. In a situation like this, I'd normally say your siblings didn't ask for this, but neither did you. Also, considering they never bothered to find you until they knew you had money. I've recently been in this situation myself. 6 digits, not 8. I've had to rescue myself from a family that suddenly is popping up when they didn't give 2 craps beforehand. I feel bad for your siblings. They're only toxic because your parents made them that way. However, they're not your responsibility. They can't be. Your parents already robbed enough of your childhood. Your hard-earned money is off limits. Like I said, normally I'd say money isn't important, family is. But you were important and they wasted that. Good on you. Not the a-hole. No contact obviously works for you. I'd keep it that way. You might want to check on your siblings to see what kind of people they turned out to be. They didn't have any more say in their parents' toxic behavior than you did. And nobody should be judged their whole life for how they were influenced to act as a kid. Having said that, I'd keep my expectations low and probably wait a bit until mom and dad aren't all fixated on their winning lottery ticket to even attempt it, and be upfront that you aren't here to finance anything. Not the a-hole. First, congratulations on your success. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. With your life experiences, you were at a disadvantage and must have worked very hard to succeed. Be very proud of yourself. Second, you owe no one anything. Even if you came from a supportive family, how you control your wealth is ultimately up to you. It is very easy for money to disrupt level-headed families, and I'm sure significantly more issues arise in toxic situations. In your case, you are in no way the a-hole. This reminds me of the family that suddenly appears after someone wins the lottery. I cannot understand how someone believes being related entitles one to another's assets. Anyhow, live your life, be happy, and continue doing what you've been doing.